Right, hi guys, I'm sitting at home. I've bought some blades with me and bits and pieces. I thought I would do a wee bit on just blade maintenance and so forth. So what I thought we would talk about is cleaning and oiling your blades and just a bit of general maintenance that you can do. You need to be oiling your blades. This is a ceramic one, that's why it's got the white cutter. I don't love them, but my clippers came with them. The blades work by running metal on metal. So you need to be oiling them. If they're not cleaned and oiled, it's just going to run hot, it's going to run hard, it's going to make your clippers work harder, and they're going to blunt a lot faster. You should be oiling them roughly every 15 minutes of run time that your blades get. I'm actually useless at doing that, but you should be doing it. And you need to be cleaning your blades. When they get gunked up with hair and dander and crud, it just gets in between the blade and the comb and just wears them out faster than ever. So to clean your blades, you do not need to take it apart. You should not be touching these screws on the back of your clipper of your blades at all, ever. That's for the sharpeners to pull your blades apart completely. As a groomer, you shouldn't be touching these at all. They are holding the spring in place, which holds your cutter in place. And if you adjust these screws on the back, if you loosen them, it will loosen how this is held on, which will loosen where this sits along your teeth, the teeth on the comb at the bottom of the blade. This is not quite wanting to focus. If this cutter gets out of alignment with these teeth, there's not a whole lot of room in there for them to be overlapping those teeth and end up nicking your dog. Okay, so don't touch the screws on the back. We don't need to. As groomers, we should just be sliding them across, halfway across, brushing them out with an old toothbrush or your blade brush or whatever. Blow them with your blow dryer, brush, whatever. It's all good. And push it across to the other side, do the same thing. Brush out all the hair and all the crud and everything like that. Don't take it apart. Okay, but what happens if you accidentally, ping, it's gone too far. You've pushed it all the way off. Now what do? Do not use your screwdriver to prise this back up again and try and force your comb back in, the cutter back in underneath there. Don't do that. Do not. This here is a spring. If you lever it up, you're going to bend the spring open, which takes the tension off what will be your cutter that sits under there. You go prising that up. That's how you loosen the tension on your springs. If your cutter is really tight to shift across there, what you do is you prise this up slightly just to loosen the pressure on it slightly, and that will help loosen the pressure across the cutter and make it easier to move, which is a good thing. You want it to be relatively easy to move without it causing any really tight friction. But you don't want to do that to try and get your cutter back in there, but you can't just slide it back in. So what you do is that little plastic bit that's in there, that's your blade guide. You can get that off. It stuck itself to the oil. I oiled it earlier. So get your cutter off, your blade guide off, sorry, and put it partially back on. So just like halfway along, prise it under there. Hold it under. Like so. Sprocket! It doesn't want to quite sit there. But I'm going to hold it under on halfway along. Does that show up very well? It's going to sit part way along. I'm just going to hold my finger there to stop it from popping out. And then you get your cutter, and using that as the guide along the channel on the top of the cutter, all you should have to do is slide it back in. Easy as that. It's in. You don't need to prise it up. You don't need to loosen the tension on these springs at all. And it's back in together again. Easy as that. You need to sometimes check these little blade guides, these wee plastic runners across the front of there. They can get split or broken or worn. If your blade isn't sitting right or something like that, check the blade guide, because sometimes you forget about that tiny wee plastic bit. That it has quite a big effect on it. Now, I was talking just before about the tension on these springs here. You can loosen those if your cutters are really hard to push backwards and forwards. You should be able to move it across with just your fingers, especially when it's oiled. If it's not been oiled, it might be a bit stiff to start it. But you should be able to push it across. It should be firm. You don't want it just popping off, but it should be able to be pushed across with your fingers. If you can't push that across with your fingers, by all means, get your flathead screwdriver and into that little bend in there, put it in there and give it a bit of a twist. It will just loosen off this bend a little bit. The other way, if you do that to one side, you have to do it to the other side as well. The other thing you can do is you can put your flathead screwdriver into the wee socket of the cutter and lift the whole cutter and the spring all together as one piece. And that will help flex that spring just a little bit, and it will just ease the pressure and make it a bit easier to push that blade across. If you're not sure if your blade is too stiff or if it's okay, what you can do is you can just go and get yourself some kitchen scales. These are really basic ones that just go around like that when you push on it. Okay, and you want roughly a kilo and a half of pressure on these cutters. The way to measure it is to slide your cutter out halfway. Now, the one there, that's 1 kilo, so we wanted a bit more than 1 kilo. It's got a bit of reflections from my window here. So, push down. Look, this has got less than a kilo, so it's actually quite loose. It's totally fine. I've been fiddling with it. Let's see what this one has got. That one's got right on about a kilo. It's got about a kilo of pressure to move. So that's kilo of pressure to move that cutter, which means this spring is actually on a really nice tension. You don't usually want it more than about 1.5 kilos. Oh, this one's about 1.3. It's a bit jumpy. It's jumpy because my blade guide here is actually a really crappy old one, and it needs to be replaced. It's got holes and lumps in it and stuff like that. Now, when you are oiling your blades, you want to oil where the cutter rubs. The cutter rubs on what's known as a rail, which is this strip, this raised hump that goes all the way across on the back and on the front. So there's 2 rails, and it also rubs along the top where the blade guide sits. Those are the places you want to oil when you're oiling your clippers, your blades. If your blades if this rail ever gets worn down flat, it's just trash. There's nothing you can do with that comb anymore at all. It's useless. You could use spare parts for all the rest of this, but that comb on the bottom, that's useless if it doesn't have any rail left, and that will wear down over time. The cutter is the bit that gets sharpened. That's the bit that cuts the actual hair. This is just the comb on the bottom. When I oil my blades, I put them onto my clippers and I tip them up onto the side so that gravity helps it. And I'll put a drop here, a drop there, and a drop here. and then the gravity and the fact that I've got it on my clippers and I'll make it run will buzz it up and down, and it will travel that oil all the way through. Just one drop all the way through will travel through and make it lovely and oiled and perfect, without making it overly greasy and making the coats go greasy or anything like that. There was something else I was going to say about that. Yeah. Oh, the fact that the cutter is going backwards and forwards thousands of times every second. So look after it. It's doing a heck of a lot of work. Put oil on it. The oil will help it to move easier. If it moves easier, it's not going to cause as much friction, which causes heat, so your blades won't heat up as fast if they're well oiled. It will also help your clippers if your clippers are not having to do so much work to make the cutter move. This little bit in here is your blade drive. There. That's the bit that moves backwards and forwards, that moves, that locks into here, into that knob and that square in the middle, and pushes that cutter backwards and forwards thousands of times a second. So if there's no oil there, it is just metal on metal rubbing over thousands and thousands and thousands of times in just a minute, and it will just wear out and it'll get hot, and it'll make your blades, your clippers, have to work hard to push it along as well. The other thing I thought about, once your blades are all oiled, which I can show you again, so putting a drop of oil on the back rail, a drop on the front rail, and down under there where the blade guide would be, but it's hidden under here so you can't really see it. And holding it on its side so that the gravity will also help it travel all the way through, and it's good to go. Now this blade, listen to it. Compared to the blade I just did. This blade's rattly. I don't know whether you've got any rattly blades, but I've got a few rattly blades. Do you know how to fix the rattly blades? The way the blades work is, this bit is a socket, this rectangle in the middle. It's called the socket. It's where the hinge will go up under there. The tongue of the hinge will go up under there from the clippers, and the little hook will hook onto the top of here, and then these little ears that stick up either side of the hinge of the socket will hold it steady onto the clippers. So this is the tongue of the lever that will go up underneath the socket. This is the little hook that hooks onto the top of the socket, and then the little ears will sit in the wee notches either side of here. Okay, so if those little ears, which stick up either side of your socket, these here, they can get bent outwards over time, just because there's a lot of pressure on them. This little piece is the only thing that's holding your blade onto your clippers. So this little thing gets quite a lot of wear to it, and these little ears can get bent outwards just because the pressure of this going backwards and forwards thousands and thousands of times can move these outwards a wee bit. And when these little ears get pushed outwards, it lets the whole blade rattle backwards and forwards on the clippers. So what you can do is very, very carefully get a pair of pliers and hold the pliers on those little ears and just give a gentle squeeze. It's tight, just enough so that you can feel it shift a wee bit. It's usually not need very much at all. And let's see. That sounds heaps better to me. It's not rattly anymore. Let's compare it back to the other one I did before. It sounds about the same to me. So if you've got a rattly blade, try that. Try squeezing those little ears in, just enough that you can feel it move slightly. If you're too rough, those ears can snap off, and if you snap those ears off, then that socket's dead, and you have to go and buy yourself a new socket and get it all redone, send it away. So just go gentle, but it can make a huge difference to the rattly blades if you just give them a tiny little squeeze inwards to make them hold on to the clippers a bit tighter. That's about it, really. That's all I could think of. Yeah, if it's helpful, hopefully it is, and that's cool. There's lots of things about cleaning blades, like using ultrasonic cleaners and UV and all that sort of stuff. By all means, ask on the group if you want to, and I'm sure there'll be lots of help with what to do and other options of cleaning and so forth. But yeah, hopefully that's cool. Thanks.